Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/slash entitled parents. In today's episode, entitled mother tries to extort my family for free child care through playdates and then puts me in danger. My mom stole my inheritance and kicked me out of the family when I asked her to pay it back. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Entitled mother tries to extort my family for free child care through playdates and then puts me in danger. So this happened when I was 6 to 7 years old, and I've only realized how entitled this mother was. In first grade, I befriended this shy, mousy girl named Mickey. Not her real name, but everyone called her that, so let's go with it here. I asked Mickey over to our house, my grandparents, a few times to play. We played dress up with my size Barbie and played with makeup at my grandma's large vanity. My family thought she was sweet and polite. Well, Mickey is one of 4 kids, 2 other girls, and a much older brother, who I was told to stay away from cause he's mean. Not sure what that meant, but I read after high school he was arrested for something. Anyway, Mickey must have told her sisters how much fun she had, and so when I asked her over a third time, her mom claimed they were jealous, so Mickey couldn't come over unless they got to as well. I say claimed because it became pretty obvious this was her mom trying to use our playdates as free babysitting so she could go out with her husband. Now, I didn't know her sisters at all, but I wanted to play with Mickey, so I told my grandparents it was okay. Boy, was I wrong, her sisters were awful. The older one was like 10, way too old really to be interested in playing with us, and she would cry at the even slightest inconvenience. Even at my young age, I knew this was weird. The younger was 5, my brother's age, and a complete terror. She once disappeared in our house and took us 20 minutes to find her in a closed clothes hamper we used for mittens. Said she wanted to play hide and seek, but told no one. It became apparent why Mickey was so quiet around anyone but me. They bullied her constantly, and I hardly got any time with her. The worst part was, though, they would literally fight over my toys when we tried to play anything. It would get so bad I would have to sneak out of my room and get my grandma to break it up. My size Barbie had to be hid in my grandparents' closet whenever they came over so they wouldn't fight over her. I would literally beg my grandma not to let the sisters come over with Mickey, but the mom refused to let Mickey come without them. This continued on for a few months, and their mom would literally call us for a playdate anytime she would want to go out, and was constantly late at picking them up too, like by hours. My grandparents had enough because not only would they basically had to entertain them so they wouldn't destroy my room or fight, but ended up feeding them 2 free meals because she would be late. They finally put their foot down, that if they wanted any more playdates, my aunt, who had kinda befriended the mom, would bring me over their house and watch us, but nothing more at our house. So my aunt would take me over to their house, and I would try to play with Mickey as much as I could while my aunt kept the other 2 busy. Her mom would only leave mac and cheese, hot dogs, and Kool-Aid for my aunt to make us. Every time, I'm convinced that's all they ever ate. By midsummer, though, my aunt and their mom had a falling out. From my understanding, it was because she felt Mickey's mom was taking advantage of her kindness, which she was. In August, to make it up to us, the mom invited me to sleep over their house. We didn't know what to expect since I had never been there by myself, but the night started out uneventful. Mickey's family had lived in a farmhouse with 3 Mares, and apparently a few weeks before they had purchased this huge, wildly dangerous, black Mustang they named Tonka. They has bought him to breed with the Mares, but anytime he got close to them, he'd attack them. They had him penned separate from the Mares, and we were told to stay out of his pen. We spent the evening playing in the field with the Mares until it got dark. That's when it started to get weird. Now, as I said, they lived in an old farmhouse, and all the kids slept in this room upstairs. 3 beds for the girls and an open-in club for the brother, who didn't even get home till late that night, only knew 'cause I heard him come in. Now, the room was a complete disaster. You couldn't even see the floor because it was covered in clothes, toys, and garbage easily up my 7-year-old knees. Now, you would think they would offer me a bed or something, but nope. The mom literally cleared away a small spot for me on the floor big enough for only my sleeping bag. I barely slept that night because I was afraid I was gonna get buried in the mess, or a mouse, or whatever else was living in it would run across me. Got up to use the bathroom and nearly fell first because I kept sinking into it. The next morning, after breakfast of sugary cereal, Mickey asked if just us two could feed the horses. Not a smart idea for two small 7-year-olds without supervision, but the mom said yes without much thought except stay out of Tonka's pen. We fed the Maras without any problems and had fun doing it, but when we got to Tonka's pen we found that the older sister had left his food tray inside the pen. To a 7-year-old, Tonka is massive, and I'm already scared of him. Mickey tells me it's okay, she'll get the tray, but I remind her that her mom told her to stay out of his pen. She said she had done it lots of times and slipped between the bars of the pen. As she bends down to pick up the tray, I watch in horror as Tonka bends down and bites down hard on Mickey's tiny shoulder, causing her to shriek in pain. He lifts her off the ground at least a few feet, and then drops her to the ground. I take off to the house crying and screaming help. Tonka bit Mickey. Tonka bit Mickey. Her mom and her dad, who had just got homework, rush out of the house. They immediately call my family to come get me before rushing Mickey to the ER, but my family, especially my grandparents who used to own horses, were livid. They couldn't believe that anyone could be so reckless to keep such a dangerous wild Mustang around young children, let alone let us both go out to feed it by ourselves. Mickey ended up being fine, just needed some stitches, but I was completely traumatized from witnessing it that it took me years before I was comfortable being around horses at all. To top it off, Mickey's mom tried to set up another playdate at their house a few weeks later, claiming they sold Tonka, so it was safe now, but my family refused to let me play at Mickey's again. Much to my dismay, when school started again in September, I found out that Mickey's mom pulled both Mickey and her older sister out of school, claiming they were being bullied or something like that, so that was the end of our friendship. A few years later she lets the youngest come back to school, but she refuses to talk to me, and my brother, who was in the same grade at the time, said she started bullying other kids. She only lasts a few more years and then drops out. A few months ago I came across Mickey's profile on Facebook. She accepted my friend request, but never responded to any of my messages on Messenger and hardly posts, so that's that. I'd like to catch up, but I'm not gonna try if she's not interested. Sorry for the super long post. If you are still reading this, thank you. I know it's a lot to unpack. My mom stole my inheritance and kicked me out of the family when I asked her to pay it back. My mother has me all kinds of F***kid up, and I'm not sure if I should just walk away. Backstory: my 27F mom, 53F, has had a really hard life. She was in a car accident at age 5 and watched her own mother die. She didn't have an active father, and no one on her mom's side wanted to take her in, so she went into foster care for a few years. Not good experience from what she told me. At age 8 she was adopted into a loving, wealthy family of 2 college professors, along with an adopted brother. She had a hard time adjusting, made a lot of bad decisions, and basically ran away in her late teens. This whole time her adopted parents were doing everything they could to reach out to their daughter and help her get on her feet, but mostly, their efforts were wasted. She has a child at 18, then again a few years later. She lost them to foster care, and then had me with a different man. Eventually, she gets her 2 first kids back, my older half-brothers, has me, marries twice again, and has 2 more kids, my 2 younger brothers. In total, she has 5 children, 4 boys with me, the middle girl. We grow up very poor, with our mother always gone or bringing back strangers to party, leaving me to raise the youngest 2. We would visit our grandparents, mom's adopted parents, for holidays and special occasions, but with my mother's strained relationship with them, we weren't able to visit as much as we kids would like. My childhood was *TTY to say the least. That being said, I loved my grandparents, especially my GPA, dearly, and they loved us kids back, and as much as they struggled with my mom, they were nothing but loving towards her from what I understand. The thing about my grandparents is that education was very important to them. I remember the encouragement for college started very early on from them, and they made it very clear that I was expected to go to college. When I was allowed to visit them, they would take me to bookstores and let me loose. They'd say, "Okay, pick one," and I would come back with 3 or 4 unable to decide. They'd laugh and get me all the books, which I could not believe. I took pride in knowing my grandparents thought so highly of my future, and was determined to keep making them proud. Fast forward to 2005, I'm in 5th grade, and my grandma passed away from long-term alcohol abuse. My mom has a wake-up call and gets sober, but is still absent from AA meetings in general disinterest. Then in 7th grade, my grandpa passed as well from the same illness. This crushed me. I wasn't able to articulate any of it at the time, but that's when the big-time depression rolled in. From there on, school was very difficult for me, as well as my home life. I ended up falling pretty deep into my sorrow and stopped going to school around my junior year of high school. After a breakthrough, I decided that I had to get the hell away from that house and ultimately moved out at age 17 to a bigger city about 45 minutes away. I barely finished high school with a 1.75 GPA, and somehow, 2 teachers from the new school convinced me to sign up for the community college. They helped me fill out my FAFSA and everything. Side note, when I received my mom's financial info for that year for the FAFSA, I saw she claimed to make around $10,000 a year. That's how poor we were. After my first semester in college, I was hooked. Science was actually pretty cool. I realized I loved to learn and kept pushing through. I worked full-time, busted my ass, and after 4 years I finally achieved an associate degree, but that wasn't enough for me. I was able to transfer over to a university that I would have never been able to attend right out of HS due to grades and whatnot, and finish my BS in my favorite field of science. In total, it took me 6 years to get my BS degree, but I worked so freaking hard, and I was so proud of what I was able to accomplish. Keep in mind, during my whole college career, my mother was characteristically absent and dismissive of what I was doing. When I was in my early 20s, still at community college, she packed up her and my baby brothers and moved 5 hours up north. I didn't have a car and couldn't come see them hardly at all. I was upset by this, of course, but that didn't matter to her. She eventually moved back a couple years later. Anyway, I graduate college with $40,000 college debt. Not so bad compared to most, I always thought. I knew that I would have to work hard and accrue debt to get where I wanted in life, so this was a necessary burden, and I've accepted that. However, things have turned in recent events in my effort to get closer to my late grandparents. I reached out to their close personal friends, let's call them the Johnsons, to get a better idea of what my grandparents were like. They were so close that the Johnsons were actually the arbiter of my GPA's will. In conversation, it came out that when my parents passed away, they left a $150,000 inheritance for the grandchildren's education. However, 3 years later, around 2010, my mother came to the Johnsons and confessed to them that she blew all the education money. On what, I have no freaking idea, but I do remember her buying a 2-door sports car, our only car for a 6-person family, after Grandpa died, so I'm sure the rest of her purchases were great investments/s. This was really upsetting to me for many reasons. I was the only grandchild that actually went to college, and that money could have easily covered my expenses. If I had that money, I wouldn't have had to spend every moment for 6 years busting my ass. I could have afforded to only have 1 job instead of 3. I could have spent that time studying and getting better grades or done an internship which literally makes or breaks your career in my field. I wasn't able to do any of that and haven't been able to get a related job, not the worst thing but unfortunate. I have a fine job in tech that I wouldn't have been able to get without my degree. I'm plenty happy with my decision. My relationship with her was already strained, but this really crossed a line for me. I emailed her telling her I knew what she did, and she needed to pay me back. That's probably not going to happen. She owns a small business in social media, and it doesn't do that great. I kind of want to just cut ties forever, but I'm so angry. I also want her to pay back the money she stole. I am so out of my depth, I DK what to do.